Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking about supply chain resilience with Zera Zheng. Zera, great first segment there. You mentioned something about testing. So I'm wondering, how do we go about testing our supply chain and making sure that it is what we expect it to be?
Mm,
Considering we're hearing it a lot now from different vendors and different consultants and hearing it to conferences. If you have a test, invite your suppliers, or ask to be a part of theirs. And yet, a lot of organizations don't want these outside parties involved in their internal tests. They don't want them to see that they're
mm,
uncovering gaps type thing. So,
mm.
how do we go about testing our supply chain resilience?
Yeah, that's also I see very interesting questions, and also a lot of companies are struggling with these kind of testings or evaluations. And I think in general, there's depends on the companies and availabilities or capabilities in the testing. There are several ways of doing such kind of exercising. So if you think about the key purpose for testing, actually, what do you exactly want to achieve through the testing? You want to know that how good you are in your supply chains, right? And also how well prepared for your vendors and in these different disruptions. So a simple way so that you can do is you can achieve through the questionnaire. Of course, that could be some people will say, hey, this is a kind of paperwork. Yes, paperwork. Also, you can learn more about what exactly they are thinking, and also using the paperwork to push your vendor to think about in case the scenarios happens, what exactly they will do. Based on the descriptions that they give to you, then you can have a better understanding whether they think how good, how thoughtful, and they are preparing for their alternative plans, right? So this is actually a quite easy and also efficient exercise that you can do with your vendor. And the second one is also you can do the tabletop exercises. That's also a quite, I would say, easy and also efficient way to understand how good your vendors and how resilient they are for your vendors. So, for example, actually, we see there's some strikes or extreme weather. You can either use the extreme weather that happens in the past, then use the same scenarios, and then to ask your vendors and to given for the given scenarios and ask them to describe how they will handle it from their side, and then you can learn, okay, within your vendor organizations how they internally will respond to the crisis, and meanwhile, how they collaborate or how they work with you to keep you informed in a timely manner of the responses and have a better understanding about the impact. Then you can use the opportunity to further explore whether there's any gaps in the communication or in the alternative solution. So that's a second way, and also quite efficient, and I would say also less costly ways and for the testing. And the third thing, if also for some companies, if they do have a budget for the also for technology, investment things, you can also think about investing on these digital twin tools, and like what I mentioned earlier. So with these digital twins, basically it's more like based on your existing setup, and also actually if you want to build up these digital twin, they actually takes a lot of your real data of your operations, then build up a kind of scenarios. And then during this scenarios and environment, then they change some of the factors, and then also to let you do the testings with the different options you have. So for example, so if suddenly you lost of these one vendors, so how your organization will respond to the situations. Actually, you can also use that result to test with your vendors to make them aware of um, any disruptions or any impact on their side, how this will affect your business. And meanwhile, ask them using them also to give you the feedback to adjust the factors that you set in your digital twins. That also help your modules you build up for these digital twins more real and more closer to the reality. So this is also another ways that you can work together with your vendors on these kind of testing. I think Anyways, of course, you will still see some vendors, and they probably will be reluctant to share the informations or also reluctant to join these exercises. I think again, it's more about collaborations. Important to make them aware this is a kind of a partnership. You value the partnership with them. That's why you want to collaborate with them and also to understand more about their resilience capability because you recognize that how important they are in your supply chain. So within this message out to them, I think this will also help your vendors to better to be more collaborative in this kind of testing.
Many organizations have multiple partners and vendors. Should they do that with each one of them? Because then that testing would kind of become almost a full-time role. Because if you have 50 vendors, let's say that your partners that you're dealing with as part of your
Mm,
organization, and you identify half of them as being, critical. We really need to work and be work collaboratively to, as you
mm,
say, with them. That's 25 tabletops in a year. How do
mm.
you go about managing that? What are your suggestions then? Because that
I
could be
was
so difficult
yeah.
to manage.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would recommend it, the 80-20 rules, right? So focus
Mhm.
on the ones most critical to you. It's either could be your strategic partners or strategic vendors who provided the most important components for your products or for your productions, or it's also could be vendors which you find it very difficult to be replaced in the market. So this also could be another way so to look at or to assess which ones are critical to you. But for these vendors, actually also just to think about different vendors and also could be give a different influence or impact on your supply chain. So actually, the time you spend with them also could be different. So for example, we do have a different ways for testing, for evaluating these suppliers and resilience, right? So you can do with the paper check, or you can do with the tabletop, or you can do with the digital ones, with using some technology. The cost and the time needed are completely different. So actually, I would recommend it that definitely you need to spend most of your time on the ones most important to you. And for the rest, which is relatively less important, then you can go through with these paper check or inquiries. We always call it RFQ, right? And then when you send out these renew the contract, you can send out these questionnaire. And then this is also quickly help you to get the insights, the feedback, and about from the suppliers about their resilience capability. So I would recommend it that value these and spend most of the time on the ones most important to you.
Good. Okay. I was wondering about that. Going, wow, you can have so many vendors. What do we do? I'd be sitting at a table every day talking with someone new.
Yeah.
There was something else you mentioned in the first segment about identifying risks. Different groups within an organization, whether it be finance, marketing,
Mm,
sales, technology, they all identify risks. So should they
mm.
all be working on supply chain together or be a part of that and also be a part of the testing?
Yeah, that's another good question. And actually, also I find many big organizations and do have the common issues on these kind of silo things. So, like what you describe, each department actually identify their own risks. Financials are usually focus on their vendors and financial stabilities and also resilience, right? And then for the supply chains, and they may focus on the vendors' supplier capabilities. And for the sales and marketing, they may values these channel vendors or suppliers, how much capacity they have. So actually, each department will have a different criteria or different focus area. So when they assessing the vendors. I think most important is, and also if you evaluate an organization, a business resilience, important is whether all the different departments can work together and toward the same goal. That's the resilience. So if you let the different departments to work their own way, then probably you will see that the entire business objectives have been driven into the different directions as well. So that's also I would recommend it, not just for the crisis management, because I feel that a lot of a company now is and also see this the siloed setup is an actually not so good for their crisis management. So now we are seeing that more and more companies actually prefer these kind of, in terms of crisis, to work with their vendors, to engage their vendors directly in their crisis management team core or crisis responses, which is good, which is also because they see the importance of engaging their vendors in the responses will help them to more efficiently, more effectively in response to these crises. The same things is also applying for the normal time when you're assessing the vendors. So actually, if to the organizations, like what I said, and now it's important to really evaluate the suppliers' resilience. If you set up the target, the KPIs for these evaluations on the resilience side, then actually you need to make all the departments, all the functions who will use or rely on these vendors to also agree that that's a target for, on behalf of your companies. Then they can actually work toward the same goals. I think this, so that's also enable the procurement team, at least when they goes to the supplier, negotiate the contract, negotiate the price, negotiate the KPIs, then at least they will go toward the vendors with the same or unified KPIs or target to evaluate on the resilience side.
Who would manage that evaluation piece? Because um, as my question
Mm,
identified multiple departments, and you said yourselves they're all going to have their own criteria and their own perspective. How do you bring that all together so that there is only one evaluation that everybody is working towards and can evaluate on the same level, the same scoring? And who should manage that, and how do you bring that together?
mm. I would say in general, for a big organization, if they have these procurement functions, then usually all the supplier related efforts or initiatives will be led by the procurement. But it then means that the procurement owns everything. Also, procurement functions in general, they should engage different functions, especially let's say the user functions, engage them in aligning or discussing what's the criteria for evaluating assessing the candidates for these task for these contracts. And also, once these vendors becomes the contracted vendors, also moving forward, how to measure their performance. So actually, all these things should be, I would say, facilitated by the procurement, but meanwhile also engage in different functions to work together and agree on the KPIs. And important is, like what we discussed, financial may have a financial target, and supply chain have a supply chain target, and the other department maybe come up with their own. Then it's also a chances that a procurement actually can facilitate the discussions to decide how much weight you put on these things. That's also reflecting how much the organization, the business, will view their what's the priorities when they're assessing their vendors. So that's also, I think, important to align before you go to the vendors.
You mentioned something there, letting the vendors know how you're going to evaluate them um, when it's new, when they're a new vendor, right? This is how we're going to evaluate you. How
Mm,
do you do it ongoing? You've signed them up, they've been a vendor now for 2, 3 years.
mm.
You continue to let them know this is the same criteria we will use, or do you use a different set of criteria now that they are actually signed on and they've been working with you?
I would recommend it if you can, if possible, then of course, better to keep the same criteria. However, maybe the market changes or the business environment changes, and then also could be this situations that the business have to adjust their criteria for the performance measurement. Then that's the time actually have to better communicate it with the vendors in advance. And most important, especially to the vendors, which is critical to your supply chain. I think that would be better to pre-aligned with them on what's the new target, what's the new criteria, just to avoid any misunderstanding that's misalignment that may result in the bigger impact to your supply chains.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leading towards because you had mentioned, business environments change. So when you sign up a new client, you're signing Alex, okay, I was evaluated on certain criteria, but 3 years down the road, we've worked on different initiatives. So is the criteria still the same? And that's where I was kind of wondering what we should
Mm.
think about there. So thank you very much. On that, we've come to the end of our second segment. We're talking about supply chain resilience with Zera Zheng, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.